Yeah, my specialty is more the pre-sup thing, but I've taken an interest in just examining argumentations and stuff like that. So I think it's fun, it's entertaining, and there are like good arguments out there in favor of veganism. There's one that I think is kind of a charlatan's trick. It's the name the trait argument. And I kind of put out a little bit of a hey, does anybody defend this?
I still don't know what you mean by make.
Oh, so sorry. I clicked the video and it started playing it. That's my bad. But I did I was putting out like a just a hey, somebody come talk to me who would defend name the trait. And I think there's a lot of problems with the argument. A lot of assumptions that I don't think are warranted. And a lot of things behind the dialectic process that are just aren't warranted. And then also just an unwillingness to actually defend the argument. There's a it's a parlor trick. Rather than actually defending the argument, the vegan demands that you defend your non-veganism, and that's not exactly how. That's not really how we perform ethics. Like everything is permissible until.
Oh, interesting.
Oh, interesting. I can hear you here, but I guess they can't hear you.
Is it working? Is it working now?
Maybe we should edit some of this out.
No, it's fine. I think what's happening, it's using the wrong microphone thing. Oh, it's working? Okay. Filters, noise suppression. Yeah, it's all... Why did it change? That is so bizarre. I'm having... Anyhow, but they heard everything you were saying. So, yes. We're talking about that, but there's also drama behind this. So the drama is that the person that we're going to be reacting to, that we got you in this room. What was his name again? I don't even know. I always forget.
Nutrivore.
I always keep thinking Norlist, which is a whole other rabbit hole entirely that I'm dealing with. But Nutrivore. Okay.
Yeah, Nutrivore. He's a vegan. I'd never heard of him before, but apparently some of the individuals who overheard me kind of reacting to Name the Trait decided to invite him to the server and have him interact with me, which I found interesting.
He has a YouTube channel.
In our first interaction, it was fine.
But he has a YouTube channel. Yeah. So basically, what happened? I watched some of like the little clips he posted. He just banned Tart and another one of our friends, just like banned him for banning's sake. And that is just like nasty in my opinion. There's the only time you really have to ban someone is if they're being obtrusive or loud or in your face or not there to actually engage in the conversation. It was really just like out of it seemed to me like weak disagreement. So hopefully, we're also going to make him react to this.
He wanted to look good. Notice he says Tart Vader flees. He banned me. How can I flee? I couldn't stay if I wanted to. Like, how did I flee? I told him I couldn't talk at that moment. I was at work. I do have a job at the time anyway. So
find his YouTube channel. Find his YouTube channel. Find the video. Let's play it real quick so everyone sees it.
I have it. Hold on.
Oh, he has it pulled up. Okay, 1 second. Yeah, he has it pulled up.
Let's just go for Tart Vader. I had it just a moment ago, but
I made you close it up.
It's just a 3-minute video, so we can just watch the 3 minutes.
Yeah, it's like 3 minutes exactly. We can just watch it and react to it. So.
Have you heard about this?
Oh, you don't have ad block? How can you not have ad block?
I don't. I know.
Ashamed.
Good day.
There? Oh yeah, I just wanted to say to Tart that I had a conversation with Isaac after that, and yeah, he agrees that your interpretation's wrong.
Oh, what?
Oh, I'm talking to Tart specifically. Yeah, his interpretation of NTT is just like flat out wrong. Yeah, he was saying something really weird to me yesterday, and I was really tired and I wasn't tracking. But yeah, after some time to ruminate about it, yeah, his interpretation of NTT doesn't make any sense, or at least it's not exactly what's being communicated by either the dialectic or the actual syllogism itself. Yeah, so I tried explaining this to him multiple times, and he just like wasn't having it. He was being very obtuse. It was really, really annoying. So I guess I'll just go through it. So
let's just skip the meta bit. I'm just here to listen in with Flora's discussion. So if, like,
I don't care about all that. So basically,
that's very rude.
Yeah, so basically Tart was saying
look how he's preparing
that,
to ban you. Look, he's
he was
just preparing.
implying, rather, he didn't outright explicitly say this, but he was implying, rather.
Look how
what is it?
Look
so
how
his
his mouse is just preparing to ban you. It's just quite unbelievable. How he's just preparing.
He's like hovering over
me.
me.
Yeah, he's just hovering over you, preparing to ban you. Why would you post this? I just can't imagine why anyone would post this and think it makes them look good. It just shocks me. Okay.
Sometimes some of your fans will think it looks good though too. Like somebody messaged me and was saying that I fled, and I was like, I was banned. Like, let's continue.
Rather, that name the trait is literally asking for like a property of the non-human animal itself, a trait specific to the non-human animal itself, which is just a flat out wrong interpretation. I tried explaining this to him. He wasn't listening, but yeah, I got clarification from Isaac, and yeah, that interpretation is just bonkers. So what Isaac is saying is that name the trait is asking for anything that is true of World 1 that is not true of World 2. That's what Isaac is asking for. And that can include things like moral dispositions. So based on what Isaac is asking for, to say that moral value has changed without a trait.
So a lot of people who are going to watch this are not going to know what he means by World 1 and World 2. So I just wanted to like stop there. Yeah. So basically, a situation versus another situation, a possible reality that you can conceive of versus a different one, is basically all he's talking about.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He's just saying that there's, he's trying to place a human in some possible world and a non-human animal in another possible world, and sort of analyze them based on what's different universally about these worlds. That's going to essentially, what's the distinction that's allowing me to eat the animal. That's all he's saying. That's not how I interpreted the argument. To be fair to his point, that's not how I interpreted the argument. But I'll show you the argument and why it doesn't really, like, you have to. This would be a distinct argument from the initial argument, as far as I can tell. But we'll go over that in just a moment. Let's get to because I mean, it's literally almost over. I haven't even said anything.
Correct. You
right?
have not said
anything. I was busy. I'm literally at work. All I said was like, "Hey, skip the meta. I'm just here to listen to Fleur." And I told him, I said I couldn't talk right now. I'd even posted it. I was like, "Hey guys, I can't talk right now. I'm at work." So it's like I'm not trying to avoid him. I'm at work.
Of course.
Trait changing is just to infer P and not P.
Yeah, I don't think you're responding to what I said yesterday. But
I'm directly responding to what you said yesterday.
Can we not, like, this is like kind of rude. Like,
okay.
I had like a very clear
ban.
I don't really care about this guy, so he's banned. Yeah. So
I'll see you later, man. I'm not interested.
All right, you're
banned. Yeah, I'm not gonna. I'm not gonna engage with somebody who's gonna ban someone on. What was the grounds? Why would you ban Fleur? Fleur was there to have a discussion. The only reason anybody joined was because Fleur was going to have a conversation with one of the other guys.
Mm-hmm.
I was there to listen in, and I told everyone, "Hey, I can't be on mic right now. I'm at work." And I don't think Nutrivore was actually there to have a conversation. But when he banned Fleur, I don't see a reason to engage with someone who intentionally uses banning as a way to control the conversation. He overtalked me every time. What I was trying to say to him was that I can't speak, and that he wasn't responding to because what he thought was my critique. I think I don't know if he understood that even if the possible worlds thing was like a valid way of interpreting the argument. Even then, that was like the weakest of the critiques I levied. There were,
of course,
there were much more substantial pieces to the argument than that, and so I was like, and that's why I said he wasn't really responding to me, is because there were much bigger problems than just the nature of the question about traits. And for your audience, I can explain what name the trait is. The idea is essentially you have. You want me to do it?
No, you can do it. You can do it.
So the idea. The idea is that you have a human and some given non-human animal, and you're going to be swapping traits between these two beings. and we're looking for the point at which the human loses enough value that you can then kill and eat this human, turn them into a burger kind of thing. And so my first critique was, well, sometimes it's not really a trait about the beings, right? Like that's a very strange assumption. Like, for instance, if I'm trapped on an island and my only thing to eat is Dandan. Dandan's my friend, but he's lunch. Like I'm gonna live. I'm a survivor, and
we're gonna have a problem with that. We're gonna have a problem with that. Don't play games.
I know Dandan's like, nah, I'm winning. I'm taking you down.
The truth, I would try to cooperate.
Keep you alive long enough, I'd take your leg.
Listen, if it's like life or death or whatever it might be, and like I'm just like sick or whatever it might be, or I'm like hurt and I'm holding you back, end me. Live. I hope you take the other way as well.
Yeah.
Like, I will be selfless enough to let you just take.
Oh yeah.
Necessary. Okay, so.
But the point is more about like whether or not you're a moral monster for having that kind of and it's like, so the argument, I'm just going to give you the syllogism. This is where
yes
let me see if I can share my screen so you can see it as well. Let's change windows and go to I'm just going to share all of it.
Yeah, share it, and then I'll just turn it on as soon as I'll just turn it on as soon as it.
This is the syllogism where I'm getting some of the interpretation of some. So, if your view affirms a given human is trait equalizable to a given non-human animal while retaining moral value, then your view can only deny the given non-human animal has moral value on pain of P and not P, which is just a contradiction, right? And so then P2 is your view affirms a given human is trait equalizable to a given non-human animal while retaining moral value, and the conclusion is therefore your view can only deny the given non-human animal has moral value on pain of contradiction. So there's the idea, like I said, is that you're doing these swapping of characteristics between these beings. Now, his response is to try to basically broaden what counts as a trait. So it's just like you put them in these possible worlds, and then it's any distinction between the two worlds. And that was what he was trying to do, was to basically solve like just the idea of what a trait is. But my critique was much more than that. So if you look at the dialogue, the dialectic tree, so I'm just going to pull that up really quickly. Basically what there is there's this flow chart of different options. And the idea is you're going to start with kind of asking, what's the point where the human loses enough value such that you can eat it? Now, my understanding is that we're looking for the sort of characteristics about the human that such that if I remove those characteristics about the human, it would be morally it would not be morally worthy of not being eaten anymore. Right. So that's the idea of the thought experiment. That's what they're supposed to be trying to get at. And I'm just like, well, I don't know.
I agree with you. I agree with you.
I don't know.
I don't know what the trait is. One of my biggest.
I don't know if there's a single one. I think there could be many. There could be like multiple permutations for all I know.
Maybe it's not even a trait that's the deciding factor, or unless it's just like a antecedent to the notion of like. Maybe things aren't morally valid or invalid based on any traits at all. So we first have to address why something even morally just valuable or not. Or when we say morally valuable, I can imagine morally valuable things that are still okay to kill and eat. We can look at historical notions of morality that Native Americans had these notions. Early hunter-gatherers had a very much deep respect and moral understanding towards the animals that they killed. Right? Some of them even do a little grief after they did it, but they still did it. So...
yeah. And the thing is that the dialogue flow tree goes to saying, oh, well, you've been reduced to absurdity because now, apparently, according to them, they think that it means you don't know whether or not a human, or sorry, like a fish with one human cell is morally valuable or not. That just doesn't follow, right? That's just a non sequitur. Like, me not knowing the substantive point at which a human would lose value, it's not really relevant to whether or not I can know plenty of other points. Like I think there's lots of points you could show it to me, and I go, no, that one doesn't have sufficient value, and that one does. And
It's basically a rhetorical trick.
But I can know that without knowing the exact point where the moral value is lost. And
yeah, it's a rhetorical trick.
I demonstrated that in my...
Right, it's really a rhetorical trick. It's very similar to when missionaries come and you go, do you know what good is? Do you know what just is? And people have a hard time answering that question, and they go, well, I have the answer for you. It kind of like plays on your ignorance. It tries to find someone who's ignorant on the subject, can't tell you why it is that they value humans more than animals. And then instead of erecting a straw man to believe, in my opinion, you give him a straw coat. You have him put it on, and then you start attacking that straw man, and then it's almost like, I can't tell you're right. Right? So everything must be equally valuable or equally moral, or whatever it might be. That's kind of how this goes, as opposed to actually exploring what it is that people think. You kind of give them the exploration tool, show them it's invalid, and they just accept it because they haven't even thought about the issue.
And yeah, I mean, you're bang on when it comes to like the rhetorical trick to it. I just don't think that they're actually, because the thing is if you're asking, if the question is what's the morally relevant difference between, say, for instance, a human and a non-human animal, there might be lots of them. Like, for instance, let's say I take a particularist view as a simple example,
and a particularist view for everyone who's ever listening is just it means that there's particulars that make a notion true or false or whatever it might be, or valid or invalid, and those particulars can change, and it's not just like there's one thing that makes something right or wrong. Okay, there's particulars to it.
Exactly. So it could be the case that, like, let's say, for instance, you ask me what's the morally relevant difference between a human and a fish, right? And I say, well, the fish isn't human, and they go, aha, let me give you a reductio on this, and the reductio is, well, what if I have an alien that looks like a human, has everything that is like a human, except for it doesn't match whatever your definition of human is. Say I say it's like DNA or something like that, right? It could be the case that I have explained the sufficient difference between a human and a fish, but that explanation is not identical to this other entity. Like, say, for instance, you have a Kryptonian that looks human in every way and walks and talks like a human, and there might be other explanations why I can't eat that being. Like, it's not human, but I can't eat it, and there are other explanations for that. That doesn't entail that I have failed to explain why I can eat the fish, right?
Correct.
That just doesn't follow. And so the explanations don't need to be generalizable. And there's nothing about, like, it could be that there's a different explanation for tons and tons of different animals. Like, I might not have the same view of eating, like, chimpanzees or something like that, right? Like, there's going to be some explanation, like, well, I really don't think I should eat these things under most conditions, but under some conditions, it's perfectly acceptable. Like, if I lived in the Amazon.
Exactly.
And so it's like but the issue is when I went down the path, I just said, well, I don't know. I don't know what the sufficient trait is for every given, non-human. Or some of them I would eat, some of them I wouldn't. Plenty of aliens that I might be willing to eat too. But they believe this is absurd, so I just lay the table on them. I go, okay, cool. If it's absurd for you to not know the trait, let me just kind of do an analogous one for vegans. You've got a fish. I've got a fish in one hand, and I'm holding a human in the other hand. I'm going to drop one of these two beings into eternal damnation. They're going to suffer for all eternity.
Who do you want to go suffer?
If you're swapping between these two beings, presumably everyone's going to save the person. But at what point, when you're trait swapping, would you not be able to make a decision between the two which to save? And Nutrivore didn't really have an answer. And I said, well, if it's absurd to not know, then it's absurd that you don't know, right? But it's not really that absurd, because when you start analyzing, you go, I don't know. Like, because, for instance, if I say it's intelligence, then I'm going to be committed to saying, well, a human of low enough intelligence would be equal to the value of a fish, and all of us go, something about that's wrong.
Right,
I don't think
about that is
it's
wrong.
really grinding against our intuitions.
And I think it just
chafes.
A big part of that is you presented the trolley problem back at him, in a sense. People like to use the trolley problem as something more than a thought experiment, as if figuring out the answer to this, and if you can conceive of one, is figuring out the answer to moral problems. Well, the trolley problem is there to show you the problem with conceiving of morals in the first place. It's not the thing to answer. That it's not like if you answer the trolley problem, you've solved the problem of morality. You've solved these. It's not how that works. Because you're not actually modeling or making sense of how one even gets to moral propositions. We don't do this calculus. We aren't presented with these counterfactuals.
I agree. And so, like, the view is that I think it seems like they're trying to reduce these moral explanations to, like, some sort of set of traits or traits, right? And he tries to solve this by doing the possible worlds sort of thing, but I think that fails to really get at the point either. Because if we're asking about the morally relevant distinction, um, he's looking for a generalizable set of traits, right? And I just don't think that's a thing. Like, it's sort of like an underdetermination issue. So, like, for the audience, an underdetermination issue is like, if I throw a rock at a window and it breaks the window, but simultaneously there's also an earthquake, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's at least the window would have been broken under under both conditions. So even if the rock didn't hit the window, the earthquake would have broken it. And so the explanation as to why the window is broken is not going to be reducible to just a rock was thrown at it or just a earthquake, right? That's the idea there. And so I think that there's going to be multiple factors in multiple ways I can sort of mix and match traits, qualities, those sorts of things that are going to produce lots and lots of different moral intuitions. In the same way that like you use the trolley problem as an example, most of us will say, I'm going to pull the switch, right? If you've got one person on one side and 5 people on the other, and I can pull the switch and save the 5 and only kill the 1, we go, yeah, absolutely, I'm going to do that. But then you put it into a doctor scenario, you've got 1 healthy patient, 5 sick ones, and that 1 healthy patient is a perfect donor for all 5 patients. We all go, you shouldn't do that.
I mean, we also
the explanation on the first one is
we also know from psychological experiments, because the trolley problem is a question or a thought experiment that is analyzed by psychologists, especially cognitive psychologists, as they try to understand what's happening in the mind. And you see that if you say push the individual, people are less likely to say yes. If you say, for example, press a button across
push the
world,
very fat man.
Yeah, or even it's something like you have to ride on a bicycle at 6 miles an hour for 30 minutes. It's not my problem, right? The answer becomes it starts changing depending on the particulars that you add in, and that it's important for like people to know that when you're presented with a trolley problem or a thought experiment. The thought experiment, you're not supposed to answer it. It's supposed to provoke you. Like if a tree falls in the forest and no one doesn't make a sound or not, if no one hears it, you're not there. You're not supposed to answer that question, right? It's there to start provoking your inquiry into the subject. And the trolley problem or name the trait is the same thing. It's the same thing. It's not actually an argument in and of itself.
Well, so some of them position it like if you go into AY's Discord, which I'm also banned from, following a very brief interaction. These guys are ban happy. I literally said, I want to say maybe 3 messages. Fleur was having a conversation with someone, and someone had posted a video of AY explaining name the trait, and I just thought he had a very simple thing in there that I thought was going to be problematic.
My door opened up, and I don't want to be too loud for my roommate, so give me a second.
No problem, man.
Okay. Back. Okay. So, where were you?
So I was saying that I also got banned from AY's server. I didn't even really interact on his server. I was on a different server, and I had said something that I was like, well, one of AY's videos had some commitments that I was like, I don't know if this is going to play in his favor. And Fleur and I were just chatting back and forth about it. And one of the admins, I guess, apparently saw our was like trying to interact with the conversation, and he ends up banning Fleur and I. And he didn't even. I asked him. I said, why did you ban Fleur? And he seemed confused about. He said, I asked him for an argument, and I was like, but he gave you an argument. He literally gave a syllogistic form argument, which oftentimes these guys will ask for an argument, and they don't seem to understand there's a distinction between a syllogism and a common language argument, and both are arguments. Like, I can give you an argument without giving you a syllogism.
Yeah, and vice versa.
I got banned from there, and then immediately banned from AY's server. I see. I was like, what?
So this ban happiness is obviously an indication of not actually willing to engage with what's going on.
Bad faith.
Yeah, very, very, very bad faith.
It's bad faith. It's a control tactic. So what they wanted to do, and I noticed they unbanned me from Nutrivore's server, re-invited me, and then they were like, "Oh, well, you're unwilling to go," and I said, "No, because I was banned. Once I'm banned, I'm not going to go back anymore." I used to do that. I used to go back. Like I was banned from AOI's server on at least one occasion that I remember before, and I said, "Hey, I don't know what the issue was." Turns out he was asking me for an argument, but he was asking me for a syllogism. I gave a common language argument. Again, they don't really seem to understand. You can give an argument without giving a syllogism. They don't know that.
When you look at 90% of philosophical works, and I've read a lot of philosophy, I'm sure you have read even more than me. Rarely are these works in syllogistic form. You read a paragraph,
and some philosophers will say it's bad form to put it in syllogism. Sometimes,
I think it's
not
bad
how
form.
you should present the argument.
I think it's always in bad form, because I think that a philosopher needs to reach the audience on more than just a syllogistic basis. Like, we're not here writing computer code. We're here explaining constructs and ideas and their veracity and their expansiveness and their boundaries and and to do that, you can't do that in a syllogism. Deleuze's work is not in syllogisms.
I'm fine with syllogistic formats. Well, I'm fine with them myself. Like for me, I often put my arguments in syllogistic format because I do prefer the clarity, and I try to do it. I'm pretty quick about it most of the time, but sometimes you can have a clear and distinct understanding of the idea and the argument that you're making without
no, for
being
sure.
able to
But
immediately
I think if you're writing it, if you're expressing the idea, right? You can express the syllogism, but the syllogism, you're still going to explain it, right? Rarely have I looked at a syllogism and not had to, in my brain, explain the syllogism to myself, or to someone else. You get really quick at it, where you just look at it, but you're still explaining it. And common language is still a syllogism. All arguments can break down into syllogism, so we don't necessarily need to put it in that form for it to be an argument. You can have arguments without doing that. I mean, most of the time it isn't in that.
And it sometimes does. Sometimes it does add clarity and it does help, but there's other times where, particularly in these instances, most of the time these are control tactics, and they're in the same way that, like I said, this is sort of a charlatan's game that they're playing. They're positioning it as if it's an argument, then they're not defending it, and there's all sorts of issues that I sort of covered in the video with him. And he seemed to, and when I said he wasn't really responding to me, what I was trying to convey was he wasn't really responding to the major issues that I was putting forward. Like, even if he manages to solve the very minor, it was a minor objection, saying, oh well, the trait thing seems like has some weird assumptions there that just don't seem to add up. If he managed to solve that, like, trait would be a really weird word if you're trying to make like a modal argument. Like, if he's trying to make a possible worlds argument, you wouldn't use the word trait, right? Like, that would be either he is truly a massive amateur, a truly massive amateur at this.
This is why I wanted to. This is why I wanted to watch.
I think he might be.
This is why I wanted to watch Fleur's argument, because at one point I'm watching it, Fleur sent it to me, and I'm like, Fleur, metaphysics is not the physics of physics. Why are you telling him this? But he didn't even pick that up. He couldn't, right? That's not what metaphysics mean. It's never meant physics of physics. Right? For those who don't know, metaphysics is only called metaphysics because when they looked at Aristotle's book, when they discovered them, there was another nameless book after physics. So meta in Latin is after physics. After physics. It has nothing to do with actual physics. Literally nothing to do with actual physics. So,
yeah, and we can watch Fleur's video if you would like.
I mean, whichever one you want. I think it'd be entertaining to watch it anyhow.
Mine was longer. I don't know if you had. We probably should have put some timestamps in these videos,
we really fucked up. We really fucked up on preparation. I ended up having to use the bathroom, and then I ended up being late. Well, Tart was on point, like at actual 9:30, and it took us 20 minutes to set everything up. So that's really where we're at right now.
I'll just hop on the Tot server because I've got some the videos get posted there thanks to
your bot?
Thanks to Marco. So here's Fleur's.
For people who
Marco is one of the admins over there. He's a friend of mine.
Oh, I love Marco.
And he takes the time to actually.
Oh, Marco is my boy.
So let's listen. Should we maybe fast forward through it, or because it's a 30-minute long video? I don't know how you want to.
Whenever you get to a part that you want to show, or maybe you can just find it real quick, and then I'll pop it up on the stream, and we can talk about it. But Tadvamasi is a server where Tart and I originally met before you came here, right? And Tadvamasi is it was it's generally a very it's a Serbian server, so it gets very a lot of people from that area of the world, which is really interesting. And it's very, very philosophy heavy. It's super philosophy dense and heavy much of the time. A lot of people really get scared because, let's just make it pretty clear, they are. The jargon is even difficult for me sometimes. I just concentrate, have a minor in it, but it's not like I really super hard focused on it.
It's heavy. And the thing is that that's where I go whenever we have our sort of philosophy guests and stuff. I'll go to Tot to pull some of our really intelligent people, because there's people from all over the world on there. It is primarily a Serbian server, but there's a lot of people who are interested in philosophy and good at it. People like Sample Text, like Marco. That's where Fleur is. Fleur is super intelligent person. And there's a lot of philosophically interested individuals on there. And when I go there, I post, hey, I'm talking to a philosopher. They're the first ones to go, oh my god, I want to talk to him. So they're really interested in engaging and stuff. And Nick Herbert was Nick Hybert, I think that's Nutrivore's actual name, I believe.
Okay.
He was way out of his depths. Fleur was a cat playing with his food.
Oh, is that what you put? That's why you put the cat swinging his thing.
That's not what I put. That's what Marco put. Because Marco, he's funny. I don't know. It was hilarious. I was like, he's a cat playing with his food, and so there's a cat on there. It was hilarious.
Okay. Let's yeah. So
Fleur was let's go with it.
Fleur is very edgy. So they're great.
Very.
They're great. Okay, so pull it up as soon as you're ready. You got to switch your stream to the video. It's right now the Discord. But don't worry.
Okay, I thought I had it pulled up, I thought.
Now you got to switch to...
Let's go.
Doom. You don't have... No, you go down to where it says...
I'm really bad at operating this.
No, go down to where it says screen. Nope. Go down. Nope. Don't stop yet. Change windows. Exactly.
Why not?
You got it.
Change windows.
Perfect.
Fleur and Nick Herbert.
And in 1440p. Oof, that is pretty sexy. Okay, let me know once you start it, and we'll pop it open.
That could be brought up to NTT, and why those types of objections being brought up are kind of relevant to whether or not the argument would be effective. And this is going to be also in reference to other types of arguments for veganism or vegetarianism, right? So there are other types of arguments for veganism and vegetarianism that I do think are very convincing. So, for example, I think our guy who got us or organizer sent you the two papers I sent, which is Core Diamonds, Eating Animals and Eating People, and Cross Guards, and Kantian Argument for Animals as an End to Themselves. Right, and I think those two arguments are very, very convincing. Okay. And the Kantian one, the Kantian constructivist one, is actually probably a lot less has probably some less baggage than NTT.
And this voice you've been hearing, this is Fleur.
Yes.
Fleur is saying that it's not that he objects necessarily to veganism just outright.
By the way, neither do I. Neither do I.
Yeah,
neither do I, and neither do Tart actually object to. I'm actually very sympathetic.
Exactly.
I'm actually very sympathetic to the vegan claim, and I'm very sympathetic to animals' rights, and I'm very I'm actually super. I just think that the name the trade argument is such a poor way to go about it. It's so gross. It's just environmental challenges. Are health challenges. These are much economic, political. These are much better arguments for veganism than name the trait.
Lowering your carbon footprint, all those things are way, way better than name the trait. Name the trait is just it has a lot of problems, but we'll keep going over. Let's hear what the other guy has to say. Essentially, Fleur is arguing here that he's just saying there's lots of arguments that are better, and he thinks that name the trait is unconvincing.
Yeah.
Right. So by effective, you mean specifically? What do you mean?
I mean the ability to convince someone of an argument, right? And I also then clarified effective. It is effective for non-philosophically inclined people. So people who aren't super educated on metaethics. If you go to your average person on the street and then ask them to name a trait, a lot of people don't know what the fuck, right? They do a lot of their moral positions. So of course it's gonna NTT is gonna work on them, right? And then I even also clarified that it does work for very, very particular types of metaethical and normative ethical positions.
So
for those who don't understand what Fleur said there,
you just mean the ability to convince somebody.
But for those who don't understand what Fleur said there, he's just saying that Tart said there's better ways of doing it, and he's kind of telling him what those issues are, right? There's normative or how we should act, and there are better ways of explaining to someone or convincing them how we should act than name the trait. Right? And it's not convincing to a lot of people. There's better ways to go about it. He's just giving out the specific details of how and why. So at this point, I expected when I first started watching this, I expected Nick Herbert to just get that. Right? Okay, this is what his argument. Go ahead. I don't think he did, though. From what I remember, I don't think he did.
Veganism?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, okay. Okay, so the proposition is NTT is not affected, or NTT does not have the ability to convince somebody of veganism. Like, I'm just trying to, or is not likely to.
It's not effective to.
It's not effective to convince somebody of veganism.
Yeah, I don't think it's actually effective at doing that. But particularly like not like for like a more like philosophically inclined or ethically inclined person, right? So somebody who knows about like metaethics and like metaphysics and the stuff that goes behind MTT. And I even granted that MTT works for some types of metaethical and metaphysical positions.
Right. Okay. So you're saying that NTT is not able to convince somebody of veganism?
No, wait.
Okay, yeah, I just need further clarity. You just mean like it's not likely that people will be convinced by it?
No, it's not effective. He said it's not effective like 50 times.
That's it. And it's only, and he's talking about it for a specific kind of audience, the sort of audience that engages with metaethical like theories. The sort of philosophical community is going to look at this and go, no,
exactly, precisely.
It might be convincing to someone who has zero understanding of metaethical situations. They have no formal reading. The sort of person that thinks that there's only two kinds of ethical positions. Either you're a realist about it, or you're an anti-realist. It's either, it's either there's truly something to morals, or there's just my opinion or whatever. And there's a lot of other options to that, right? There's so many more ways to go. But to your average Joe on the streets, maybe they might find
of course. I mean, for your average Joe on the street, people come to your door.
Philosophical rigor.
People, presuppositionalists come to them and be like, "How do you know anything?" And they go, "I don't know." And they're like, "Well, God explains that answer." And they're like, "Okay." But Fleur is talking about serious thinkers, like when you actually care about these issues. And the truth is, I haven't actually I've seen people convinced of NTT, name the trait, but they don't maintain their vegan outlook as things move forward. And I think that's a recognition of the issue with that argument to begin with, because it doesn't really do much. Because it doesn't represent how we even arrive at morals, because we don't use traits necessarily. It's not a good description of how morality is even built within us. It doesn't hold water. It doesn't stay for a long time. And that's also, that would be an empirical claim.
You gotta ask the question though, because you're talking about the method. The method is definitely going to be like an empirical claim, right? Yeah. How is it that we actually go about moral reasoning? Now, I can tell you, I don't need to do an empirical study to know that that's not how I don't sit there and go, let me trait swap between these two entities and find out the point at which this one entity loses moral value. That's not really how I go about doing it. And do I need to discern do I actually need this set of traits in order to help me explain, how a human has a sufficient value to not be eaten? I don't think I need that. I don't think that that's how I do it in practice. And I don't know why I would do that in practice. Like, I don't need a trait swapping with like, if the analogy that's Shadow Starshine. I don't know if you guys are familiar with him, but he's got a YouTube channel as well.
Okay.
He and I he's a pal of mine. We're more of an acquaintance right now, working towards pals. But he'll say, "Oh, say we have a beautiful painting and a not beautiful painting. Do we sit there and trait swap to determine what we mean by beautiful?
No, we don't.
Is that really what we do? No, that's not how that's not how I do it. And I don't know that I could even, if I was looking at a beautiful painting, I don't think I'd be able to find a list of, or a set of traits about that painting that tells me that it's beautiful. Like, there wouldn't I don't even know if there would be a set that's like that. That would be the explanation in every instance. Like there might be reasons I think a painting is beautiful. Like maybe I really love the shade of gold in it, or maybe it just really represents something emotional for me. But the explanation is going to be different for every painting. There's a weird assumption. Why would I assume that the explanation for every given non-human entity is going to be the same thing? And that's the generalizability, and that's the
That
bigger
particularism where you
the
come,
bigger
yeah,
problem that I see.
yeah,
Exactly. But we can continue.
yeah.
Let's see what this guy says.
Let's let him talk a little bit.
What I think I clarified my position several times. So I
okay.
said,
Well, you just give it to me straight. I'm sorry. Just give it to me straight, please.
Philosophically inclined, right? So people who like know these positions, right, are not going to be usually convinced by NTT, and I can give you the reasons why. I think that it's not convincing, except for like a few meta-ethical cases.
Okay,
right?
So NTT is not effective at convincing people of certain meta-ethical positions.
No, certain that proposition that like veganism is true, right?
Okay, NTT is not effective at convincing not
effective at
people
convincing people
okay.
who are philosophically inclined. It's pretty simple.
I might have just lost track. Just one more.
Oh, sorry, I muted my mic. We're 4 minutes in, and he's not said anything interesting. Let's just
skip
ahead a
yeah,
little bit because he's struggling really hard right here.
Yeah.
Let's skip ahead, so because I do have to go here in a little bit.
That would just be something empirical. Like it just sounds like a bunch of intuitions. Like, do you have any data on the effectiveness of NTT among this demographic? Yes or no?
Yeah, but if I have an intuition, I have reason to assert that intuition.
Sure, I don't deny that. But if you're saying that it is true,
then it's enough for me to assert it as true.
Excuse me?
So if I have an intuition, right, and I have reasons behind my intuitions, it's enough for me to assert it as true, whether that be prudential reasons, whether that be epistemic reasons. It's a warranted assertability criterion, not a justification criterion.
I'm not sure I'm appreciating what you're saying. Like, I'm not sure I'm understanding it. Like, this, you're making a claim about the way the world is.
Yeah,
right?
and I'm justifying my intuition about the way the world is. And I don't necessarily need, right, if anything, right, you're the one going around trying to convince people of NTT. And every time I see within like my philosophical groupings, right, I see people not convinced, people who are philosophically not convinced by NTT.
Well,
however,
I want to flag something really quick. When you say convince people of NTT, what specifically are you referring to?
To change their alethic attitude towards a proposition. So,
right. So I take NTT, or at least so far as I use it, because I don't really run any syllogism for NTT. Not really. I take NTT to be a dialectical procedure. So to convince people of NTT just sounds like strange to me. Like convince people.
And this is where he's playing word games. There's literally a syllogistic form to NTT, and then it's paired with a dialectic. Oftentimes, when you challenge it as an argument, what people will do is they'll instead of engaging with what you're saying, they'll say, no, it's just a dialectic method. It's like, no, it's not. It's not just a dialectic method. It's in modus ponens form. That's not a dialectic, right? That's the beginning argument, and then the rest of it is in dialectic form.
But let's say
and the dialectic form is also intended to be argumentative.
So obviously it's an argument. We all know it's an argument. You can try to whistle away that it's not an argument and it's just a dialectic form. It's just a, rhetorical tool for the conversation. But if that's true, then why even talking about it? You give up your thing. If it's true that the entity is not the thing that convinces people, then by you saying that it's not even an argument, then it's not supposed to be convincing. It's not supposed to change minds. It's supposed to, right?
And during my brief interaction with there's another guy who defends it named Avi, and Avi sort of goes with this. It's just a dialectic, and that it doesn't have any sort of like there's no like force to it. It's not trying to get at anything. It's just trying to do like an examination of your ethical methodology. Now, this would just make the argument lack teeth, right? The whole reason the argument has teeth is if you take a look at the at the flow tree, right? The flow tree has only a couple of endings to it. Either it's a reductio ad absurdum or it's a contradiction.
Yeah, if you open it in your browser, it will pop up, and then everyone could see it.
That's a heavy.
Click on the open in browser, and then it should pop up on the browser. Don't move to the Discord because I'm gonna hear myself. Perfect. Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah.
So right here, if you see at the end of it, it says each one of these ends in a reductio ad absurdum, so you've been reduced to absurdity, or you've got a contradiction. That's the bite of the argument. It's trying. This flowchart is, if they want to say that it's not representative of all the outcomes, then it's not really a flowchart, is it? Right? But if all the outcomes are either a reductio ad absurdum or a contradiction, that's the bite of the argument. But when you try to make it into just a dialectic method and just a conversation, it loses its bite. And
it loses its argument.
That's what we call a toothless argument.
Yeah, it loses its argument, and
it has.
So like,
there's no force.
He already admitted within here that it's not even supposed to convince anyone. But not only is it not meant to convince anyone, it's not supposed to convince anyone. It's a rhetorical tool. It's a dialectic tool. That's entirely. He literally shot himself in the foot here. So for him to go ahead and continue to ban you and ban Fleur, it does a disservice to actual people who care about animal rights. I care about animal rights. I might not be a vegan because I haven't found an argument that makes me literally call off all animal products. But whenever I do eat meat, I try to make sure it's bought ethically sourced, right? Where the animal, we really do. We have a connection with the farm. Me and my roommates, we try to eat meat, and sometimes we can't, but meat is an important part of my life, my diet. So, but we do. There are ethical things that I can do, like donation and other means to go about it.
And all Fleur is trying to get at here, when he's talking to him, is he's trying to say there are reasons, even if like the claim sounds empirical, right? Like, let's say I say most people of X will just don't find this sort of convincing, and that sounds like an empirical claim, right? But if there's not an empirical data, then my anecdotal evidence is in fact evidence.
Correct.
So like, the only reason that anecdotes are problematic is if there's empirical evidence counter to the anecdote. So if I say, well, most Christians I meet say XYZ, and they go, oh no, they don't believe that, and I go, okay, awesome. I might ask, do you have some empirical data that counteracts my anecdotes? And if the answer is no, then the anecdote is still of warrant. And I think what they want is to make every empirical claim require some sort of a study, and that's just not true. Like, if you look at historically, philosophers will talk about the opinions,
but not just philosophers, but even
scientists.
Scientists, before they have a hypothesis, have a justification for why they should study that to begin with. They don't have evidence of the hypothesis.
And
they don't have evidence of the empirical inquiry before they even try to inquire. But they do have guesses, and they do have intuitions, and they do have knowledge by which they base their ideas on. And then they go ahead and explore that to try to verify that empirically in a much more substantive way. No one is saying, Fleur wasn't saying, I have knowledge to this degree of certainty that it doesn't work. I have intuitions, and I can justify them philosophically. And in these intuitions might be something like, let's just say in psychology, you want to explore a specific neural pathway, and I'm trying to find the center in the brain by which there is personality, let's just say. And you go, do you have an empirical claim for that? But I don't even need an empirical claim. I can just dismiss it. You're not going to find that based on previous evidence and previous intuitions. That's not even going to be a thing that exists. That's why I don't think NTT is going to convince philosophically minded people, and here's why. And mind you,
and that's all Fleur is getting at, is that.
And he already,
he's pointing out this is not going to do that.
Yeah,
it's not.
And he admitted that it isn't, because he said, well, I'm not even interested in it as an argument. It's not an argument. It's a dialectical tool. So.
Precisely. Now I've got about 5 or 10 more minutes, so let's listen to a little bit of this, do one more response, and then I unfortunately have to go.
That's fine. That's fine.
The stream.
We'll see. I probably will end it. This is more for recording purposes / I like having the live streams. It's fun to see it in action naturally. Yeah. It's cool. Before we edit it and make clips and different videos, and also again for your channel, I want you to upload some of this stuff, and
of course
some clips for you. Do some shorts, get it going. Because for those who are watching, and
I really do need the help on that for sure.
We might make some. We are gonna be on Rumble doing Rumble shows, and I really want us to like hit the ground running, as they say, because I think it's important. Anyhow.
And the more I can have your help, the better, because you know all the things that I don't know. So, so let's listen just a little bit more, and then I'll take my leave of after maybe one more clip, and then
yeah, for sure. Another thing to reply to. Perfect.
People of a dialectical
yeah.
procedure.
And
I don't really take NTT to be something to be convinced of. It's like a type of conversation.
If it's a type of conversation, then why are you providing metaphysical explanations for the conversation?
What do you mean?
So NTT has several metaphysical interpretations, right? And they've consistently changed their metaphysical interpretations, and they provided it as syllogism. Unless you're providing unless you acknowledge that NTT is a rhetorical tactic, right, then that's fine. But you also, like, the rhetorical tactic requires, right, it requires certain metaphysical commitments too.
I'm not entirely sure, like, what metaphysical is referring to.
First principles, reality, grounding relations.
I don't understand what grounding is supposed to be referring to either.
Grounding relations, like a dependency relation between like two objects. So like there's like causal ground, like what causes another.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in that case, like I don't know why you would say metaphysical and not just say like reality or something.
Because that's the domain of the study is
metaphysics is not reality. That's why.
Physics, right? And when you go in, right, and a lot of MTT relies on modal claims, right? Because you're giving me different hypotheticals. And you're telling me there's a different possible worlds, right? I need you to actually commit to certain types of modal claims.
If by that you just mean like I'm
just gonna stop it there. Nick is hilariously lost here. Like I think it's fairly obvious.
Yeah,
that he
it's
is
painful.
Lost, but
it's a little painful.
Metaphysics is like if we were just talking about physics, right? Physics is the way in which reality behaves. We're just talking about this. If this happens, this will happen. Metaphysics is about the nature of reality, and they keep giving new metaphysical interpretations of this argument, right? It's not like it's not like this argument has not gone through multiple permutations and been reinterpreted, and it's being reinterpreted in literally Nick was reinterpreting it into like a modal argument in order to compensate for my very very moderate kind of like, hey, the word trait is very ambiguous and doesn't really make a whole lot of sense here, as if it's like some property about the animal or the human. That's the way I interpreted it. He's saying no, that's not how it should be interpreted, and then he puts it into this big modal argument, right? And you can see by the argument that the language is not modal language, and suddenly he's reinterpreted it into a modal argument. That is a metaphysical commitment he's just made. That he's talking about modality, right? He's talking about the way, which for the audience, modality is just like an examination of possible worlds.
So a modal argument is an argument that hinges.
It's like
modal argument is an argument that uses possible worlds as a means of getting to a veracity of a claim and making the conclusion follow. Basically, so it's an argument.
Simple enough.
Yeah.
Simple enough. Yeah. And he's reinterpreting the argument that I laid out, about traits and all this, and he's reinterpreting traits as like properties as a member of some modal set or something like that. This is a metaphysical interpretation, and it's strange to do that for something that he thinks is just a dialectic method. Right? It's like, okay, well, one, you're reinterpreting the argument because the argument is very obviously not in a modal format. Modal arguments have possible worlds are going to be mentioned in there, and none of that's in there. So they've just reinterpreted it, but they've pretended it's the same argument. This is dishonest. That is dishonesty. It's not something you should do, and in philosophical literature and in academia, it would be shredded for that. They would be like, absolutely fucking not. So, but I'm gonna leave it there because I am about to head out.
Go have fun.
I do have to go.
Go have fun.
I will. It was good talking to you. We can pick up here another time.
Yeah, for sure, 100%. Of course, I always find your knowledge of the intricacies of like analytic philosophy just a chef's kiss. I love it. You have a really good grasp of it. So
I also think you're very based. So I'll be back. But for now, peace out.
Peace out. Well, he cut out short, and I wish we could have done it for a little bit longer. Love Tart. Why is my camera not working again? That's not cool. It should start up again, and then I'll do my little peace sign and, you know, keep thinking. Come on, let's go, camera. Why is it not? There we go. Little peace sign and keep thinking. I hope it was fun and educational. I know there's a lot of jargon there, but just bear with me. If you're watching any of these videos about this topic specifically, and I might add this at every single one at the end of them, a deep philosophical conversation, just remember that the words seem confusing right now, and the notions seem difficult to understand, but just the more you expose yourself to it, the easier and easier it gets and becomes. These are really easy. People think I'm really smart just because I know and I'm a nerd. It's not really what's going on here. Anyone can really think philosophically. So, you know, don't be afraid. We do have a Discord, and the link will be in the description. I'll make sure to put it in when I edit the video. Come join us, talk to us, ask questions, inquire. And as always, stay thinking.